I'm Sean O'Connell. I'm the chair of the chamber, and thank you for coming to the State of the City, one of my favorite events every year. I'm going to quickly sit down, but I'd like to introduce Catalina Celentano, who's the Community Relations Manager for our sponsor, Eversource, this morning. So, Catalina, take it away.
Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everybody. Good crowd. So Eversource is pleased to once again serve as sponsor of today's State of the City here in Dover and to join you in welcoming the local officials who are serving your community, as well as to stand with the Dover Chamber of Commerce in your efforts to promote a great city in which to live and do business. I also want to make sure I recognize Portable Pantry this morning for all your help in making our event a success. Like the city of Dover, Eversource has had a very busy year. Since we became Eversource just over a year ago, we have focused on improving reliability for all our 211 communities in New Hampshire. Technological improvements have resulted in less power outages, faster restoration times, and the ability to give customers an estimated restoration time within 45 minutes of their reporting an outage the majority of the time. In 2016, the technology improvements will continue, in addition to a focus on reducing tree-related outages. Eversource is committed to investing $30 million in tree trimming this year to protect 11,000 miles of line and maintain reliability. Here in New Hampshire, 89 communities will be trimmed this year, which includes more than 1,000 miles of trees. And here in the Seacoast Reliability Project, a new transmission line connecting Madbury Substation and Portsmouth Substation is going through Durham and Newington is moving forward. After working with the municipalities impacted, we filed the application with the New Hampshire Site Evaluation Committee for a certificate of site and facility last week. I want to take this opportunity to thank the City of Dover and the Dover Chamber Board for sending a letter to the Site Evaluation Committee in support of the Seacoast Reliability Project. This new transmission line will be another key way that Eversource will support the economic development in the Seacoast and in Dover. It is mine and Eversource's pleasure to continue to partner at events like this and to provide forums for elected officials and our citizens to better understand the amazing work being done in our communities. On behalf of everyone at Eversource, thank you for coming today, and best wishes to everyone here who is working to make the Seacoast and Dover a go-to location for great living, great leisure, and a great place to do business. It is my pleasure now to introduce to you Dover's City Manager, Mike Joyal. And thank you again.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Catalina, for that introduction. And also thank you to the Chamber and Catalina Eversource as well for hosting us again this year. I also want to extend my appreciation to each of you for attending and your interest in learning more about the current state of our city. Joining me up front today is our Police Chief, Anthony Colarusso, our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Elaine Arbor, and our Assistant City Manager, Chris Parker, who's responsible for planning and strategic initiatives here in the city. Each of us has been looking forward to sharing with you this morning not only some of the recent achievements in our community, but also goals, priorities, and challenges for the coming year and beyond. Let me begin this morning by showing you a short video illustrating, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, the effort, the work, the commitment, and even the passion that goes on day in and day out in making and keeping our community an exceptional place to live and work.
Some people like to climb mountains. I like to build planes in the air.
I grew up wanting to be on a wing, wanting to be up this high.
Sometimes the temperature up at altitude will reach 60 below. It's brisk, it's refreshing.
You never know what you're going to come across up here. Canadian geese, mallards.
Owls.
These people back here, that's why I come to work. That's why I build airplanes in the sky.
We're not just building a plane here. We're building a dream.
I love this job.
I get a lot of thanks up here. When I look over there and I see that little kid, I look in his eyes, that's all the thanks I need.
UDS, managing the complexities of the digital economy.
This is one of two videos that I frequently use in some presentations that I make. I should buy stock in EDS. I've used this video in past orientation sessions for new city councilors as the depiction of an aircraft built in mid-flight symbolizes how shaping, maintaining, and operating a community is a continuing effort that does not stop and has no downtime. Much like the workers building that aircraft while it is in flight, there are many, many people who commit and give of themselves to keep our community aloft, in flight, and striving at all times to stay on a course that will get us to the place that we seek to be. Our passengers, the citizens, businesses, and visitors in our community depend upon and benefit from the personal investment of time, energy, and contributions made by many. Much like there were workers in the video visible doing maintenance around the plane and there are pilots and crews on board, there are also an untold number of people supporting and contributing to the flight of that aircraft on the ground and behind the scenes. The same is true throughout the Dover community. There are many who give of themselves, invest, and contribute to the betterment of our community day in and day out. I should have done this earlier, but let me take a moment now to recognize all of those who are here with us this morning who give of their time in one way or another, hold our community together, and keep us in flight and tracking on a desired course. I'd like to ask if please raise your hands and keep them in the air if you're an elected official, either state or local. And I'd also would ask if anyone here is serving on a board or commission for the city of Dover. Would you raise your hands, please? Is there anyone here that serves on a board or a nonprofit board? Keep your hands up. Anyone here that serves on a board for a nonprofit organization or helps support or participates in a community event here in Dover? And last but not least, is there anyone here that owns a business or represents a business, and also any of our city department heads and staff? Can you raise your hands as well? I hope I didn't forget anybody. Thank you. Thank you for what you do in making Dover the great place that is today and will continue to be in the future. Everyone in this room, whether you want to admit it or not, has made and continues to make a difference towards the betterment of our city. For that, I hope and encourage all of you to continue to take pride in being a part of and contributing to our community here in Dover. In recognizing the contributions that all of you and many others who are not here with us this morning have made and continue to make, I'm pleased to report to you that the state of our city is sound and our community is successfully moving on a course towards realizing its long-established vision. Although as a community we will always be faced with challenges which in turn have corresponding opportunities, feedback from throughout the community and from recently completed independent assessments, which I'll share with you in a moment, have validated this statement. Herbert Kane, who's a longtime community column writer with the San Francisco Chronicle, noted some time ago that a community vision for itself provides an important indicator for measuring success. He understood that a community's vision was derived from the collective input of citizens, business owners, and other key stakeholders interested in the long-term future of the community. Most importantly, he was aware that a community's vision needed to chart a continuing direction and a lofty course into which a successful community will continue to grow and evolve. In charting our course for success, Dover's community vision remains to be a city with an emerging urban vibrancy, guided by a small-town sense of community. This vision was developed and reinforced by various community stakeholders over the course of the past decades through our community's development of its master plan. It speaks specifically to a desire to enjoy our city's unique historic identity and small-town feel, our livable neighborhoods, and our ability to easily gather and connect with each other. It also addresses residents and visitors being able to enjoy and support the downtown as an attractive, vibrant focal point of the community where people readily gather and socialize. A moment ago, I noted that feedback from the community affirmed that the state of our city is not only sound, but also is heading in the desired direction established by our vision statement. As you may already know, our community has been a regular participant in the National Citizen Survey. The survey is administered in communities across the country and asks residents to provide feedback on a number of factors relating to community livability. The results from the most recent surveying of Dover residents released earlier this winter indicated that Dover residents generally enjoy a high quality of life. Overall, residents gave positive ratings to Dover as a place to live, work, and raise children. They also rated positively the overall appearance of Dover, their neighborhoods, and safety throughout the community. Residents also indicated that they would highly recommend and plan to remain in Dover. One key benefit of participating in the National Citizen Survey is the ability to compare responses of Dover residents to those of residents living in other communities across the country. Dover residents specifically rated the vibrancy of the downtown significantly higher than that of other communities surveyed across the country, a measure which directly correlates with and suggests progress in moving towards our community's vision of achieving an emerging urban vibrancy. Meanwhile, as an aside, the only area in the survey where the Dover community scored lower was in the area of citizens' participation in religious and spiritual activities. And as Jason Howard, owner of Ross Furniture, reminds us in his store commercials, I will see you in church on Sunday. While the Dover Vision Statement provides an overall direction or course to be achieved by our community over the long term, our local government's mission statement articulates how and why services are delivered by city government. As you can see from reading it here, it speaks to the need for city services to remain affordable while also being of high quality. In fulfilling our local government's mission, the annual budget process is the means by which our community allocates the resources that are deemed affordable and necessary for ensuring a high quality of services. The proposed budget for the coming year has been undergoing a review by the City Council starting last month. This budget proposal reflects a total $136 million for spending across all funds, a 7.5% increase over the prior year. This is a complete budget in total for all of our municipal services and reflects all sources of funds, including grants, the self-supporting operations, and the general fund operations, which a portion is primarily supported by property taxes. The proposed budget includes significant increases in non-tax related revenues, helping to offset the increased expenses. These have continued to increase with development activity and an improving economy here in the city of Dover. It also includes a $1.3 million increase in state adequate education aid, which is unrelated and not dependent upon the ongoing lawsuit the city is pursuing against the state of New Hampshire. As you may be aware, the state has filed suit in Superior Court against the state of New Hampshire for its failure to provide adequate funds here in Dover given its constitutional requirement for funding an adequate education for each and every student across the state. Certainly, the most significant item proposed in the budget for next year is the addition of the initial debt service associated with the high school and career technical center. Since the majority of increases in the budget are offset with the improvement we are seeing in non-tax related revenues, the city portion of the budget is within our tax cap requirement with an estimated city-related increase of $30 for the average homeowner. Meanwhile, the spending recommended by the school board, combined with the debt service required for the high school project, places the school portion of the budget over the tax cap by approximately $2.3 million. This results in an estimated school-related tax increase of $219. The remaining increase is attributable to the county for a total estimated tax bill of $265 for the average homeowner here in Dover. And that's as the budget is currently proposed as it sits before the City Council. As the Council continues to work through their review of the budget over the next several weeks, I fully expect that they will seek to reduce the estimated increase to a level that is considered more affordable while taking into account the anticipated impact of the high school debt service that had been considered when approving the project last year. In looking at this data, Dover remains affordable, especially given considerations for the value of services available in comparison to other communities. One measure comparing Dover's affordability to communities is tax per capita. And you can note at the bottom of the list is Concord, and that's somewhat of an anomaly. Concord does not include funding for a school. They have an independent school district, so the number for Concord is simply their municipal operations, whereas all the other communities are the full municipal, city and school and county operations. As you notice, Dover's in the middle. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest. But again, I think if you look at the services that we're providing compared to many other communities, the value is certainly there. And being in the middle, I think, shows that Dover is affordable compared to other communities. Another measure of affordability when compared to other New Hampshire communities is the full value tax rate. The full value tax rate is a rate that is calculated by the Department of Revenue Administration at the state of New Hampshire. It seeks to equalize the values, the property values across the entire state. So it provides you a measure of the tax burden from between one community and the other. You can actually look at the tax rate, the full value tax rate, and see which communities have a higher tax burden versus a lower one. If you simply look at tax rates, not the full tax rate, but just the tax rate that might be reported in the news, that's not telling you enough information about to compare the burden of one community to another. The full value tax rate allows you to do that. And here, although it's not an anomaly, Portsmouth is by far the lowest, and that's clearly a reflection of the commercial property values that they have to help offset some of their tax impact. But again, in the middle, Dover, not the highest, not the lowest. In arranging the debt financing for the high school project, the city was recently subjected to a bond rating analysis by an independent credit rating agencies. Independent credit rating agencies. These agencies provide an independent verification of the fiscal and economic health of the community. In short, the findings reflected in the reports issued by the rating agencies attest to the financial health of the city of Dover. Again, the state of our city being sound. The agencies noted that the city maintains a conservative approach to budgeting by referencing historical trends as well as adjusting for current economic projections. The agencies also commented that the city's management team is strong and adheres to best practices for comprehensive fiscal policies, including multi-year budget and capital forecasting. And that's not necessarily a pat from my back as a city manager. That's a reflection of the discipline and the I guess the persistence that city councils in the past and the current city council have had in putting together budgets and adhering to some long-established financial policies that have put us in a good financial standing where we are today. It's also a reflection of the work of the department heads and their staff in making sure that they're properly managing their budgets to meet the needs for the services that they're required to provide, but doing so within the constraints of the resources that they have. In analyzing and reporting on the health of the local economy, the rating agencies also noted that our community is located in an economically diverse and strong regional economy. Wealth levels in the city are just above the national average, with median family income equal to 113% of the U.S. median. Overall, the city's market value grew by a strong 1.2% over the prior year to $2.8 billion. And notably, the city's unemployment rate is very low and continues to trend below the state and the United States average. Looking ahead to the coming year and beyond, there are several goals and priorities that the mayor and city council have established. These were assembled as part of a goal-setting process that was completed with our department heads earlier this year. Their goals are covered by the general areas that are reflected here. They include working with the school board in advancing 21st century education, doing citizen engagement, involving citizens, encouraging citizens to be involved and informed about city government, increasing community awareness about day-to-day activities, and working to increase public participation, both through boards, commissions, and at public meetings. Our downtown pedestrian and vehicle access is a point of a goal, a priority in the coming years, looking at improving access for both pedestrians and vehicles, and certainly the completion of the parking garage fits nicely into that. Economic development, and although Chris is going to elaborate more on some of the success we've had in establishing public-private partnerships for mixed-use developments and also commercial developments in a moment, this addresses the work that's being done by our Dover Business and Industrial Development Authority in developing long-term continuous improvement plan for economic development throughout the city, providing for coordinated and well-planned growth through our land use policies and site approval processes, working on increasing commercial growth and attracting new commercial properties or development of properties here in the city. And of course, looking to by doing so, strengthening and broadening our tax base away from residential and more towards commercial. And lastly, infrastructure and service delivery is an ongoing and continuing priority, and looking at developing long-term sustainable operations for the community so that our budgets are sustainable from year to year, that the services that we're providing are appropriate and necessary for the community and the characteristics of the community. We also want to ensure that not only the public services, but the facilities and the infrastructure, the city's water, sewer, streets, sidewalks, storm drains are not only able to accommodate the needs of the community today, but long into the future. So in addition to these priorities, I'd like to now turn this over to Chief Colarusso, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the achievements that have happened in the police department recently. And I would also be remiss if, as part of this presentation, we did not address a significant challenge and an immediate priority that must not be overlooked. And the chief's going to address that for us, and that's the opioid crisis that's affecting all of us, all of our communities, and here in New Hampshire, Dover's not excluded, and across the country. So, Chief.
Thank you, Mike. Is this all set? Sound good? Okay. So I'm going to present the Tale of Two Cities. The first part of my presentation is going to update you on the police facility. Then we're going to do a total 180 and talk about the opioid crisis. But first, let me mention that we're going to have a grand opening of the new police facility. The governor will be there. Our elected officials, hopefully, all will be there on Friday, May 6th at 5 p.m. And then at 6 o'clock, you can all go to the chamber event, the sweepstakes event. So hopefully they dovetail nicely. But when Mike was playing the video of the airplane and flying in the air and building it in the air, I started thinking about that was building the police facility for us in the police department. It was a massive undertaking. Obviously, for you who don't know, the police facility was approved a year prior to the parking garage. So it was decided that we would then build them together in the same location. And the two structures, the parking garage and the police facility, are actually two separate buildings separated by about 6 inches. And where they join in, the entrances are the same. There's a big expansion joint between the two buildings that allow access for the public from the garage to the lobby of the police department and for the employees to enter. So it was quite a feat, and I laud the engineers for their ingenuity. But this is the police department. Thank you, Mike Gillis, for taking these photos and putting them together for us. That's from the Chestnut Street area, which is the primary entrance of the police facility, and from Orchard Street. So we had to build Orchard Street to put the two structures together. And that's our lobby. That was just taken a few days ago. This signage here was just put up a few days ago. We're still, even though we moved in about 4 weeks ago, we're still having punch list items and a few things to button up as we finish. To the right is our records window, and they're protected by ballistic glass, and there's ballistic paneling throughout the whole wall to protect the employees. There have been several incidents in the country over the years of people coming in, and the biggest threat is handguns and rifles. And there's many more attacks overseas, so we try to keep that in mind looking into the future, try to make sure the employees are protected. That is the Chief's conference room. We have, at the old police department, we had one conference room. In the new police department, we have 3 conference rooms and a large training room. And this is another conference room. This is our detective bureau's conference room. The flat screen, they can watch interviews or interrogations being completed from this from this screen, from the conference room. That metal center strip on all our conference rooms is for power and data, so we can plug in laptops or whatever we need. This is one of our sergeants in our detective bureau. We, in the old PD, we had 2 private offices in the entire PD. One was the chief's office and one was the lieutenant's office. Now, just in the administrative suite, boy, this is pretty sensitive, Mike. In the administrative suite, we have 4 officers, 4 private offices. And detectives have 2, and there's several other private offices throughout the building. We now have an employee break room. At the old PD, just to compare and contrast, our break room, our briefing room, our radio charging room, our mail room, our weapons cleaning room was all the same room at the old PD. Now we have our own break room, our own briefing room, our own weapons cleaning area that's ventilated, so it's much better and healthier for the staff. I hosted a department head meeting. As you can see, most of the department heads were there, and I was giving them a tour. And I talked about the lobby a little, how when we designed the lobby, we wanted to try to make it as customer-friendly as possible and friendly for the citizens. So we have a flat panel with messages on there, community information, welcoming any groups that are visiting us for the day. You can't see it, but opposite the records window, there are men and women's bathrooms. There's water fountains with a bottle water filler that we encourage people to come in to use at any time, and we want people to be welcomed to the police department. I picture Apple Harvest Day, where we have large crowds, and we want the volunteers to direct people if they're looking for a changing table for their child, water or restrooms. Yes, feel free to use the police facility. And we have an entrance, the primary entrance off the street, and the entrance from the first level of the public garage. This is our training room. It seats 48 students. We can configure the room any way we want. It will also serve as our emergency operations center. This closet right here will contain a full dispatch center. So when we have serious emergencies, most of them are weather related that really affects the whole city, we can bring in an extra dispatcher and triage all the calls from this EOC room. The benefit of the training room is right now we have a 2-week accident reconstruction course going on right now. And we're hosting the training. The trainers are out of Florida, and students are from all over. We have a student from Miami, we have a student from New Mexico, all over New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. And while their departments are spending travel money, hotel money, food money, and tuition, we got 4 free slots for hosting the training. And it's actually a 6-week course. We do two weeks now, 2 weeks next month, and 2 weeks the month after that. And we'll have 4 new fully trained accident reconstructionists free of charge. And meanwhile, and I know Gary Bannon talks about this, as you bring people in, even though it's a few of them, they're coming into town, they're going to the restaurants, they're staying at the hotels, and they're spending their money in Dover. This is our new dispatch center. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 positions. 3 are fully built and operational. 1 is for future growth, and we use it now as a workstation. The big screens on the walls, we monitor our camera systems. There's multiple cameras throughout the garage and the facility, both internally and externally of the police facility. And the dispatchers, as you can see, they have a big job. They have a lot to do. They're dispatching police, fire, EMS. So that dispatch center is about triple the size of what we had before, and we're able to bring in new modern furniture. Those workstations can also rise so the dispatch can stand if they would like while they're working, because they're basically in there, locked in and really can't leave. This is our garage within the garage. So at the lower level of the parking garage, underneath the public portion, we have our own private entrance coming off of Washington Street. And these 2 garage doors are actually our sally ports, where if we have somebody in custody, we pull into the parking garage on our side, pull into one of these garage doors, and then bring the person into the booking room to be processed. And this is a view basically from our employee entrance looking out. At the very end through the grate, you can see the chop shop. So to give you some reference there. The vehicles at the very end are our armored vehicle, the Bearcat, our command vehicle, our mobile command vehicle, and our crime scene vehicle. So because the design of the garage where the public entrance comes in on Orchard Street and it ramps up, you can see we have very high ceilings and we're able to get those big vehicles in. So that's a huge benefit. Those vehicles are very expensive, well over $200,000 each vehicle, and we want them to last for many years to come. And by having them indoors, as well as our cruisers, our employee cars, our administrative and unmarked cars, I think it's a good benefit. It was certainly a win for us. Not many police departments have covered parking to protect their vehicles, and it's a great benefit to us. This is our tactical area and our gym. So many people don't know, in the police officers' contracts, they have to pass a physical fitness test every year. State law says every 3 years. We do it every year. If they do not pass 2 years in a row, they can be terminated. So the front part of the gym is our weights and aerobic exercise. This open part in the foreground is our tactical area. So when we train, mandatory training on handcuffing, refreshing, use of force, use of our batons, our tasers, weapons retention, defensive tactics, which we train every year, which are mandated. Now we have this area. Before, we would be finding different areas around the city to do our training, and lately we've been using the North End Fire Station, which was an inconvenience to them every time we had to go train up there. This is part of our evidence room. Those shelves are called high-density storage, so you can get multiple pieces of evidence within that area. And our finance director is asking Tim how much that cost. So they're pretty expensive. Our evidence drop-off, I'm demonstrating what I'm opening is a refrigerated evidence drop-off area, this part here, whereas the officers drop off evidence in various, depending on the size of the evidence. The refrigerated evidence, things for like blood tubes and rape kits. And we didn't have that before, so we had just a college-type refrigerator with a little lock on it. This is temperature controlled and has an alarm on it in case it fails. And the last slide I want to show you is the place you don't want to be, is one of our holding cells. We saved a lot of money by not building a jail. We hold people temporarily, and I'm talking an hour or two at the most. And if they're going to be held after their arrest, we bring them to the county jail because we're using and leveraging our county services, which allowed us to save money. When Manchester built their PD, they built a jail where they'll house people for several days. And it's a big liability to hold people. And the county is more equipped. They have 24-hour staff as opposed to just somebody being monitored on camera. So overall, the PD's substantially complete. Like I said, we have a few punch list items, but the police department itself came under budget, and by probably about $50,000 when it's all said and done. And the garage was under budget by about $500,000. So we hope the city can take those savings and do something else with it. Now I'm going to do the 180. I'm going to readjust my mind. Now for the bad news. Opioid, we've been having significant problem with opioids. And you can see the rise from the slide. In 2013, we had 1 death related to an opioid overdose and 9 non-fatal overdoses where the person was saved. In 2014, that number went to 6 fatal and 45 non-fatal. And last year, we had 12 fatal, or 1 a month, overdoses and 58 non-fatal. This slide was developed a while ago. So we've had, so far this year, 2 fatal overdoses and 16 non-fatal overdoses. The last one was yesterday at the Shaw's parking lot. An individual, a male, overdosed, was brought back by paramedics using Narcan. And it's his 5th overdose in the last several weeks. He overdosed just the night before in Lawrence, Massachusetts. So we have a huge drug problem, and the only way we're going to attack this is really threefold. We need to really up our prevention efforts. We need to educate the community. This is part of that, educating people about the problem and getting action behind it. The second part is treatment, which is a problem. Because 80% of current heroin users stop by abusing a prescription drug, and the other 20% usually progress through different drugs, marijuana, right up to a harder drug, to heroin. And they're addicted to pills, which are very expensive, and now they're harder to get. And so they move to the next best thing, which is heroin. And the heroin is being laced with fentanyl. And fentanyl is really the powerful drug which is causing the overdoses. So we have to attack it by education, which is preventing people from starting in the first place, treatment if they become addicted, and then enforcement. We still need to put pressure and go after those drug dealers who are bringing the product into our area, in through New York, into Massachusetts, and up through New Hampshire. And many efforts are underway in that regard. One of the problems in New Hampshire, and a big stumbling block we've run into, is we identify an addict, such as the one from yesterday, and they go to the hospital, and there's no place to go with them from there. Even if they wanted help, New Hampshire lacks treatment, and only a small percentage, if you look at all the states, New Hampshire's here, that the people who need treatment actually get treatment. So that is a big issue. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to give people, because people get a hold of pills, we want to make sure that any unused pills get destroyed. We have Drug Take-Back Day. The boxes you see on the right are all boxes filled of prescription drugs that people came and dropped off. We do that in cooperation with the Drug Enforcement Administration. We also give out free drug destruction bags. So at the same time we're getting people to destroy their drugs, we're also educating them about the problem. Ways to lock up their meds. We're trying to get people to lock up their meds. We're doing education programs, conferences. We're getting on the radio, our Outreach Bureau staff. I've been on the radio talking about the issue, both locally and statewide. And we're trying to ramp up our efforts to help those who become addicted. So the person who was overdosed yesterday, they'll get a follow-up call probably today saying, how are you doing? There are some resources. These are the resources that are available, which, by the way, are not much again, but we try to lead them to recovery. We've hosted a couple of recovery days at the hospital. Those have been very successful, where we have various vendors and the prevention and treatment professionals in one location, one-stop shopping, so people who want help could go and get help. A big thanks goes to Warren Douglas Hospital. For the second year in a row, they've given us $125,000. And recently we've said, let's take some of that money and really focus it on the opioid problem. And that's been a huge help, especially with paying for public service announcements, because again, we think education is the way to go. Prevention is really important. So we thank Warren Douglas Hospital for that partnership. We have future plans. We're trying to ramp up different things, have people come into our facility, say, I need help, welcome them in, bring them up to the hospital, and we're working on, with the hospital, where the hospital will have a place for us to bring them, then they can be evaluated and hopefully treated and referred from there. And we want to open additional recovery services. Our goal is to maybe open year 1 in Rochester, year 2 in Dover, and year 3 at Durham UNH. And that's it. Any quick questions? I know I'm limited time. Okay, great. And now I'll introduce Dr. Elaine Arbour.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be back for year 2. As a still fairly new superintendent in Dover, one of the things that attracted me to Dover continues to hold true, and events like this really shine through, in that there is a significant amount of community interest, community engagement, and participation. And when I saw City Manager Doyle asking, you know, all of you who are participating in some way in improving the Dover community, raise your hands, and it was pretty much everyone in the room. I think that speaks volumes for the community, and it's a pleasure to be a part of that. As we do our work in the school district. We try to think about not only what do we need and want in our schools, but how does that impact the broader community? And we saw the Dover City mission statement of creating an emerging kind of urban, vibrant kind of community with still a small town feel. And the Dover School District's mission statement is strengthening our community by educating every child every day. And so we really do see ourselves as an important part of that conversation about what does it mean to help strengthen Dover overall. One of the things that you have heard a lot about, and so I'd like to give you an update from last year, is around the high school building project. We have had a joint building committee in place since March of 2014, so I wanted to give you some of the highlights of what has been happening in that project. It's been a significant project. We have a fabulous building committee put together, and they are working hard. So since the committee was formed, we have had a feasibility study posted in terms of an RFQ. An architectural firm was hired after we interviewed quite a few. We brought some back for a second interview and chose from there. So we have gone with HMFH Architects. We completed the feasibility study, and last year when I came to speak with you, I had shared with you that we had several options on the table at that point around, do we do new construction, do we do an addition and renovation of the existing facility, or do we do a straight renovation of the existing facility? And one of the things that we learned after costing that work out was that it was ultimately going to be more financially feasible, and you'd get a longer life building that better meets the needs of our schools and also can improve some community access to the facility by going with a new construction option. And so that was done. That was chosen and approved by both the Joint Building Committee and the school board. City Council has approved all of the funding. So we've had several community meetings to get to that point around reporting out what are our findings, what are things that we know, things we're struggling with, things that work well. We also then posted for and ultimately hired a construction management company to help us move into that next phase. So they're working closely with our architects around the design phases. We just completed the design development phase, and those plans and specifications were just recently brought forward to the school board for approval. And so we've come a long way in the last year when I showed you some very rough conceptual drawings. We've also joined with the city in terms of a traffic impact study. We all know the 108 corridor around the high school and middle school campus is a bit of a quagmire, to say the least. And so we're trying to think about not just what does traffic flow within the campus look like, but how are the things that we're doing, the way we're orienting the building, the way we're creating our traffic patterns internally, impacting what's happening out on the 108 corridor and over on Bellamy. So we're really trying to look closely at how we can configure some things to try to minimize that impact as much as possible, given that there are two large schools on a smaller campus. So we're working on that right now. We have recently just posted for a commissioning agent and actually have hired a firm, and it's HEA, so I have to look and see what it stands for. We haven't worked with them long. So it's Horizon Engineering Associates. So they'll be joining us as we move forward in the process. And it's important for them to be coming on board now because they can help us as we're looking at our construction documents, catch anything on the front end. But then once we start to break ground, which should be in early summer, then we'll be able to have them work with us along the way to help keep an eye on things as we're going so we can catch any problems before they get too far down the road. And our architects and construction management firm have begun to submit permits to the city. So that's pretty exciting. We're moving and starting to have some real tangible results at this point. So I wanted to show you some of the designs as they exist at this point to give you kind of a sense of what we're looking at. So this is obviously a conceptual drawing, but one of the things that we're looking at is a slight variation from the traditional red brick that we typically see around Dover. And when you look at higher ed campuses, for example, you often will see a gray type of brick. Kind of feels like it elevates the stature of the building a little bit more of a college campus feel. And so we're looking at some light and dark gray brick as well as some lighter accents to pop out and catch some light. So this is just a very rough conceptual drawing of what the outside might look like. This gives you a site plan so that you have a sense of where we're talking about. So here is the current Dunaway Field Complex. That will remain in its location. Originally, we had talked about starting this spring with a new turf field. Because we also are likely going to need to do some work on the track, that is actually going to be moved out for probably about a year or so, so that we're not investing money and then having to reinvest more than we would if we just kind of did the track and the field all at once. So we're moving that out a little bit, but that will remain in the same location. We'll shift the high school back here. There are currently some fields back here. This is roughly where the current high school is sitting, so we'll reorient it a little bit. That will allow us to not only still have use of the campus, because obviously while building is happening here, we can still be inhabiting the school here, which is an important feature. And it's one of the things that we thought a lot about as the Joint Building Committee was thinking about options. If we had had to renovate the existing facility, we would have had possibly up to 7 years of construction and having to kind of shift students from section to section in the building, which would have been highly disruptive for a long period of time. So there will still be some disruption on the site, but students will be able to maintain their education within the facility without having to worry about some of the air quality and the noise and the safety things that you worry about when they're actually doing the construction inside of an active school building. So this loop looks very similar to the current one, but it actually will be a bit bigger. So we're hoping that that helps to spread out some of the traffic pattern a little bit. Alumni is right here. That is not moving. We are working around the possibility of a few tennis courts here. We're looking at some additional parking here. And so again, one of the things we're trying to do is spread out where some of that parking is happening so that traffic can flow more smoothly, which is less likely to bottleneck it in places on the site. When we are finished, we will be building some new fields up here. So the fields that we lose back here we'll be able to rebuild. During the process, a lot of people have asked, well, what happens with our athletic programs? And our athletic director, Peter Watton, has done a tremendous amount of work already, working with Gary Bannon from Recreation in terms of how can we access different city facilities. He's also been working with other school districts. We actually just signed an MOU with the Oyster River School District. They'll be doing some construction coming up. And so 1 year they'll work and use our track, and then when we're under construction, we'll be able to use their track, for example. So we're trying to do some bartering with area communities to help maximize the dollars and the access to these spaces without increasing the cost or without decreasing the ability for our students to participate in these programs. This is a view of the interior courtyard. So there's actually a slope here. And so what will happen is we'll have an ability to have some classroom, outdoor classroom type of space here. Over here will be an amphitheater type of space. So again, some outdoor learning opportunities. We've got several classroom spaces that will have the ability at certain points to be able to actually go directly out into the courtyard. There also is going to be some tunnel access so that maintenance and custodial and ground services can get into the courtyard and do things with the softscape, the hardscape, snow removal, all of the maintenance things that need to happen in there. So we're still having a lot of conversation about the details of what's in there and how that plays out, but this gives us some really nice learning spaces, and it also does something that the current building doesn't do. You may have heard that a large portion of our current building doesn't actually have any exterior windows. That is a very dull, dreary kind of environment. And so one of the things that we're doing with this courtyard is it allows us to have exterior light into all of our classrooms. And so when you think about how you feel after being kind of in a dark space for a long time and how it kind of sucks the energy, and then you go into the sunlight and it just kind of boosts you back up. There's research that talks about the impact of natural light, fresh air on learning. And so we're really talking about this not only as an aesthetic, but also more importantly, as the ability to improve some learning outcomes for kids just with their physical affect in the space. Over here, one of the things that I really like a lot is there are some art classrooms, and so we're looking at an opportunity for there to be not only some outdoor workspace, but possibly some of the sculpture that our students do going out into this courtyard. So again, our students can use this space as a learning environment in a lot of different ways. This gives you a view of the entry level. And so the main entrance into the building is right here. There is another entrance for the Career and Technical Center over here. And that does a couple things for us. One thing is that it gives us more administrative coverage across the building, so we have better lines of sight. So administration can see here, and this side can see over here and across. So it gives us more visual coverage from certain points in the building. One of the other things you'll notice, the green spaces are different types of administrative spaces. So down here we have, for example, our principals, our deans, we've got guidance and nursing going on. So those are the types of spaces that we're talking about when you see that green. The blue spaces are our Career and Technical Education Center spaces, and one of the benefits of having this access point over here, in addition to the increased visibility, is that we need to have positive control about kids coming in and out for programs because, as you may recall, we serve a lot of students from other districts. And so we want to make sure that we know who's in our building and who has left our building for safety reasons for our students. We've got some larger workspaces that need outdoor access. So when you think about automotive, those require very high lifts. We need to get cars in there, things of that nature. So we've got several outdoor spaces. But one of the things that we've tried to do is incorporate some of our CTE spaces within the building. Right now it's a very separate wing. And when we think about the opportunity for students in career and technical education programs, we're not talking about the old vocational ed that people may be thinking about. We're really talking about sophisticated learning that's happening in these programs. And so it's an opportunity for students to be able, in this design, to actually engage with and see what's happening in these classes as they're walking by. It's no longer a separate space off to the side. That helps us to engage kids in saying, hey, I think I might want to check that program out. I might want to try that pre-engineering class. I might want to try one of the animal science classes. I might want to try culinary arts, etc. And so we're really looking at providing greater visibility and access for students into programs that can help them either go into higher ed in a field or go right out into a well-paying, solid career in a field directly from high school. And quite a few of our students have done that. Over here you can see part of the auditorium. Trying to think of some other highlights. These lighter orange spaces are general classroom spaces. And over here, I believe we have some science spaces. We've moved our NJROTC program here so that not only do they have some drill space inside, but they can also now access the courtyard for some of their drill space. So as we work to get that program reaccredited and recognized fully by the Navy, one of the things that we know is that we need to have more appropriate drill space for our students, more appropriate facilities. And so this helps us to do that without creating a wide open room that's not being used all the time. The lower level, you can again still see the courtyard. These are some of those larger rooms that take multiple stories that we talked about with Tech Center. But for the lower level, you can also start to see our gym access. So we have a full competition gym. But one of the other things that we talked about is we never have enough space in the city of Dover for the amount of gym use that is requested between school and community groups. And so we talked a lot about, do we add another gym? Do we add a half gym? How does that play out? And so we felt that it was a better investment, not only for the school, but also for the community, to add another full gym, but it's not a competition gym. And so we'll be able to block that off from the full competition space that will have bleachers that can come out, things of that nature. But it still provides another space that we don't currently have for gym use. So that helps community use. It also provides us opportunities for additional rental if the community doesn't need it for something. Again, you can see part of the auditorium playing out over here. And then this is the second level. And so these are looking down into the courtyard. Again, there are quite a few more science type rooms here. We clustered them because of the types of setups that they need, the plumbing, the electricity, the correct drainage for chemicals, things of that nature. You can see that there are some additional CTE spaces tucked in with the other programs, with the other classrooms. We also, in the high school design, have some different size spaces. So we've got sort of traditional classroom spaces, but we talked a lot about being future-proof and having some flexible learning spaces. And that doesn't mean those old temporary walls that end up breaking soon and that you can hear everything through, but rather it really is looking at what size spaces do we need to accommodate different learning needs at different times. And so we'll have some regular classroom size spaces, we will have some smaller group spaces, so you can have breakouts and it's a good solid workroom and workspace where there can still be supervision, but students have that place to go and really dig in. We also are talking about some slightly larger spaces where you might have several classrooms come together to either do some performances, some presentations, exhibitions of their learning, or engaging in a more active learning environment that just requires more space. So we're really trying to think about how can we create a building that more accurately mirrors the types of environments, the types of learning and demonstration of learning that our students need to have when they go out into the world as adults. One of the other things that I'll just kind of point to from here, on the entry level when you walk in, remember this was where the administration was, so this space is what we are calling the town square. It's also the cafeteria, so it's not just a grand open space that doesn't get used at any other time, but it's the cafeteria. That becomes another one of those flexible learning spaces during the day when lunches aren't happening. It gives us an opportunity to have kids in there. But really off of the town square is where we'll have some of our more public types of things. So we have culinary arts off the town square. Animal science will be able to be off of it. So the places, cosmetology, the places where the public comes in to access the services that some of our programs provide, will have easier access. There's easy access to our athletic facilities and our auditorium off the town square. So again, we'll be able to do some things around kind of securing portions of the building while still giving excellent access to those services and to those spaces for the community. So we're very excited about that. These are white because there are other spaces, the gyms and the auditorium around there. This gives you an example of what you might see when you walk in the town square. And so we're looking at very simple, very clean lines, some basic but durable building materials. And we're just looking at ways to use those simple, clean lines and materials, but to provide just some kind of points of visual interest throughout. This would be some space that you can look down over as you're walking by. There is the potential for this. This goes out into the courtyard, so there's the potential for that to open up as the weather is nice, if we want to, again, create a larger kind of indoor-outdoor space. So there are some opportunities here with this wide open space that we can really access. This gives you an example of a typical corridor view. And one of the things that, I don't know if this has ever happened to any of you, but after nearly 2 years, I still get turned around in the high school because there's nothing that signals that you're in one section versus another. Everything looks the same when you start to look around. And the numbers don't work. They don't make sense. They're not actually in sequence, which is kind of unusual. So one of the things that we've been working a lot with the architects on is some very simple visual wayfinding measures. That sounds like a small thing for me to be mentioning, but if you've ever gotten turned around in the high school, or you've ever been in there on open house night and parents keep looking at you saying, I have no idea where I'm going because I thought I was going to be in room 120 and room 118 is here, but there's no 120 anywhere near. You know, those kinds of things happen. So we want to do some things where people can visually quickly know where they are and, oh, I have to go to the blue section, you know, just to help people get a sense of the building. You'll also get to see where we have, for example, some lockers out here, but where the classrooms are, there's a little bit of space. I don't know if you've ever seen a student at a locker and someone opens a door and they almost take out the student. Not the safest thing ever. And so we're trying to give a little bit more space there. And we're also giving some visibility into the classrooms. So again, as you're walking by a classroom and you look over and you say, wow, that's really amazing. I want to take another look. I might be interested in trying that. It's a way of helping to engage our students. It's a subtle thing, but it helps them to know more about what's happening and be curious about what's going on. So a lot of folks have asked, where do we find information about this? I'm not sure what you have been doing as a building committee. I'm not sure why you're making these decisions. I want to see the technical reports, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really long, but in essence, if you go to the city project pages that Mr. Gillis maintains, there is one for the Dover High School there. It's on the city website. All of our documents are there. All of our minutes, our technical reports, our visioning session, all of that is right there. So I encourage you to look. I encourage you to send people there. I check it out periodically, and it's very up to date. All of our plans are there from the most recent approval by the school board. So you can see everything you want to see, right down to the multiple volumes of specifications that were recently brought forward. So there's a lot of detail there. And this actually brings you directly to the most recently approved plans and specifications. So for folks who were interested in finding out more about it, or how we have gotten to where we are in more detail, that's where the information can be found. You can also go to the school district website, and there's a building project link, and it'll bring you to the city project page. And then we have another building project starting. And so one of the things that we've talked about is the need to appropriately maintain facilities. We know that those are the largest capital investments that any municipality makes. And if we make an investment to build a facility or to renovate a facility, and then we don't maintain it or we don't keep it up to code, we start to see that deteriorate. And it costs more the longer you wait, as we know, and that's been a lot of the conversation we've had around the high school tech center project. So Garrison Elementary School is one of those facilities that has not had as much TLC as it maybe has needed over the years. I know prior to my becoming superintendent, it was in the capital improvements plan for a while. It got removed. My first year here, we put it back. And so we're really trying to keep that on the forefront, because there are a lot of things that are starting to fail. And if we don't address them, pretty soon it's going to be hard to salvage the building. I mean, there's a section that really, it's old and it's the original section and not a lot's been done with it. And so in addition to some failing systems, we're also talking about the need for accessibility to meet other code, safety code, things of that nature, update some of the electrical. We have sliding doors like you would see a patio door, not the safest thing in a school. And so there are things like that that we need to be taking a look at. And then we have site issues where we have a lot of drainage issues and we've got a pretty significant ravine off the side. And so the JBC actually for this project, this is the only slide for this project because there have been 2 meetings, but the JBC was just formed and we have posted for appropriate vendors to submit bids for a current conditions study. We've received those bids, and so this month the Joint Building Committee will actually be interviewing for and hopefully selecting or getting closer to selecting one of the companies that has put in a bid. So that's where we are in the Garrison project. And I think just to wrap up, you know, I'm talking to you today about the building projects, but there is so much more happening in the Dover school system. And I encourage you to reach out, visit our schools, talk to our principals, our teachers. I mean, there's a lot of really good work happening. And when I visit classrooms, one of the things that I continue to be impressed by is in almost 2 years of going around, just dropping into classrooms, almost 100% of the time, it's a pretty rare moment that I don't see students and staff actively engaged in pursuit of learning. It's a pretty rare moment that I don't see that, and that's impressive. And so I just encourage you to kind of check out what's happening in the schools around you, and certainly reach out to me if you have any questions. We would welcome that. So thank you for listening. I'm guessing there may be opportunity for questions later. So I'm going to hand it over to Assistant City Manager Chris Parker.
Thank you all. I noticed that I'm batting cleanup, and I'm going to try to do a better job than David Ortiz has been doing with the Red Sox and bringing us all home with enough time for some questions. I use this slide as the opener because I think it's good for us to remember where we came from as a community, and also to remember that a lot of this infrastructure is still here, and a lot of it we're building upon to get back to things that were done in the past that have been removed. I want to talk to you about some public-private investment and partnerships that we've done over the past 4 or 5 years as part of our Strategic Initiatives program. One of them, the first one that came to mind, was First Street. And this is a project that we worked with, taking the existing First Street parking lot, a parking lot that the Parking Commission had determined was not utilized to the full extent. Working with the Business Industrial Development Authority, the Parking Commission, we put together a request for proposals, and today we have a building on that site. And this is a 32-unit residential with commercial retail restaurant on the first floor. As you can see, this picture is actually from last week. You can see that the commercial is still underway. I know the property owner is working steadily to attract a tenant for that space. Part of the public-private partnership was a lower sale price from the city on the property, but in return guarantees for tax revenue. So in this case, a property that provided 0 tax revenue, parking lot publicly owned, provided 0 tax revenue, under the agreement provides first $5.1 million in value for this existing Phase 1 building, which has a value of approximately $135,000. By 2020, a second phase needs to be in place with a total valuation of $10.1 million. One thing that is notable is the developer found such strength in the market for getting the original building in place. They've actually come forward and indicated that they're going to move up their timeline for getting that Phase 2 in because they see the vibrancy that's being created in the downtown. Another downtown project is the 3rd Street project. This is a similar underutilized parking lot. The Parking Commission and the Business Industrial Development Authority have identified that this would be a good location for more infill development. We put out a request for proposals in the fall. We are actively working right now to negotiate a development agreement with a potential builder for this site. Part of the interest on this site would be to retain some of the public parking because we don't want to have no off-street parking in the 3rd Street area. Switching now to a more private deal. This is a project right outside our window here. This is 104 to 124 Washington Street, formerly the Robbins Auto Parts Building. This is a structure that has been used as an auto parts facility, warehousing facility, some office space. In the 30s, it was a theater and a rooming house. It's now under plans, which are before the planning board in the technical review phase, to put a 47,000 square foot mixed-use building with commercial and residential components. Through the development of a, apparently the tax revenue wasn't where I was expecting it to be. Through the development of the public partnership, the first phase, and there are 4 ultimately, but the development agreement between the city and the developer is for 2 phases. In the first phase, it needs to have a $5 million assessed value after about 5 years, and then an $8 million value total over phase 1 and 2. Again, due to the market and due to the financial stability of the community, the developer is actually looking to increase that phase 1 and 2 numbers to come in sooner than later. Outside of downtown, because not all of our development agreements are within the downtown core, we have a project that ended up being Stonewall Drive. This is off of Mast Road. This project was to lure Stonewall Kitchen, which was a company out of Kittery, to open up a facility here in Dover. They actually permitted 270,000 square feet of commercial industrial. Part of that agreement was the city contributed to constructing Stonewall Drive, constructing a pump station and a water system to help provide additional development on this 50-acre parcel. As a result of the city's investment, Rand Whitney came along and did an additional 130,000 square foot industrial structure. So 400,000 square feet of commercial industrial were put in place permit-wise. The Stonewall is still on their first portion, but based on that $1 million investment by the city, there's been a return of 400,000 square feet of commercial industrial space permitted and under construction. Silver Street, you might have heard of this project. It came before the council last August. Silver Street, this is the former McIntosh College Culinary School location. The city was planning on putting a roundabout at the end of Silver Street in 2021. The developer came forward and said to the city, we want to build our facility, a mixed tenant facility, but we don't want to open and then have a year later you come and tear up our front door. So they worked with us to put that development forward with the roundabout as a component of that. And you can see here it's a mixed tenant facility. This is a medical office building, rehabbing the existing hotel that was in sight, a assisted living facility, as well as a bank and a Dunkin' Donuts / restaurant. Usually I say eating and drinking, but I think there's been enough coverage that we all know it's Dunkin' Donuts. In addition, the roundabout will be installed by the developer as part of their site plan. The city will pay for that roundabout, and then through the guarantee of tax revenue based on the land development agreement, we will receive taxes in excess of the repayment of that bond payment for the tax revenue. Final one I wanted to share with you is one that was just approved last month by the City Council. This is on this is on Dover Point Road. We all might know it as the former Thornwood Farms site, just above Bill Doobie on Dover Point Road. This is a mixed-use project with residential, commercial, both in the same structures as well as on separate structures. There's some single-family homes that have been built there to date. It involves a through road between Dover Point and Middle Road. This agreement between the city and the developer has the city helping to contribute towards the cost of that through road. In exchange for that, the developer, let's see if I can figure this out, the developer is going to donate 4+ acres of land adjacent to Applevale Park and construct a multi-use soccer field on the site. It'll be utilized, owned, and operated by the rec department here in the city of Dover. In addition to that, knowing that the high school project was going to be utilizing fields that are in existence today on the high school site, we worked with the same developer who also did the Stonewall project on Mast Road to guarantee the creation of a soccer field on Mast Road as well. which will be not donated to the city, but it will be managed and operated by the city and able to be used by those high school athletics that are being displaced by that project. In addition, there's a 10-acre parcel of land just off the slide here that is already in conservation that the developer of this site owns, and they will be granting public access to that. So there are trails that go around the pond. You can sort of see the outline of the trails here. That all will be donated to the city, so the public will have access to go down and use those trails as well. I think it's important to point out why we are able to do these public-private agreements. And a big component of that in my mind is that we have supportive policymakers, whether it's the council showing leadership and saying they want to help manage and direct growth, whether it's the Business Industrial Development Authority seeing the value of these public-private partnerships, whether it's the Parking Commission identifying proactively underutilized areas that might have a better value as a structure, or the Planning Board looking to these processes as part of its review. We have an accessible, collaborative, and experienced staff. I think this is an important thing to point out, that when someone walks in and says, I would like to do a deal with you, whether it's myself, the Economic Development Director, anyone on our team is able to say, we have a process for that and we can work with you, and we're happy to work with you on that. We have flexible zoning and innovative regulations which stem from our master plan. If you look at our master plan, which the city manager mentioned earlier, we have effectively set ourselves up for success by identifying opportunities for growth and development that take advantage of these flexibilities in these public-private partnerships. And finally, I think the last thing that's important to note here is that we have an understanding of the barriers to development. We understand that it's not just you buy a piece of land, pay an engineer an exorbitant amount of money, and have them design something and then construct it. There are a lot of other obstacles in the way, and we as staff and as policymakers understand that, and we understand how we can help you get through that process. I understand that you all are really here just to hear me, but I also understand that there's more value in having questions here, so I'm going to wrap up now, and I hope that we have some time for questions that we can all take a part in answering.
Great. So we have a mic here. If you just raise your hand for me, if you have a question or a comment, I'll come to you, and you can introduce yourself and ask a question. So who's the brave soul that's going to get us started here? Lots of good information. Don't be shy. Wow, you guys might be off the hook. All right. Representative Verschernan is going to get us going. Thank you.
I'm Jim Verschernan. I live on 6th Street in Dover. That's for Dr. Arbor. You didn't talk about the cost of the school, and I was at the city council meeting last week where we had considerable input on this. What percentage of the school increase is actually due to the high school? If we were to separate that out and say, okay, this piece is an unusual piece that we're adding on, what are we talking about, the $265? What percentage of that?
I actually am sorry to say I don't remember the percentage off the top of my head. The bulk of the increase is a result of the debt service, though. So as of right now, the budget that we have brought forward from the school board to the city council, if you took out the debt service for a moment, which I know is difficult to do, but if we set it aside for a moment, currently it is about $195,000 over the allotted tax cap amount. We are working to bring that down, and so that's a conversation that I'm having with the leadership team. We'll be bringing some recommendations forward to the school board, but the bulk of that $2.3 million overage is the debt. You're welcome.
Chief Coloroso, I have a question about the opioid addiction. They've been saying that the lack of in-house treatment centers is seriously affecting this and perpetuating the problem. Mm-hmm. You did touch on that. There were, I think you mentioned 2 that were planned. Is that correct, or did I mishear that?
Yeah, we're trying to open recovery centers, not so much, the in-house treatment is very expensive. So for a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day program, we're trying to take it one step at a time. So we're trying to do it community-based recovery centers where people who want the help can get the help. So currently, you really don't have many resources that can really focus their attention on the powerful addiction of the opioids. So we're trying to start slow, open up recovery centers, work with the hospitals, work with almost existing resources and add-ons. And the real solution for addiction is really long-term intensive treatment. But that's very expensive. That involves insurance companies and expensive facilities. We actually had one, Seabourn Hospital, many years ago. Now it's the Dover Christian Academy. And they basically left because it wasn't lucrative enough for them. They weren't making enough money. So money is certainly a factor.
I would ask each of you, you're speaking to primarily the business community here, if there was one sort of actionable item that you could give us all as a business community of what we can do to help in your respective areas, if each of you could address that, what would be helpful to you as a business community to help move your work forward?
I guess I will start. So I think that one of the biggest things that impacts many schools throughout the state, it's not unique to Dover, is the way education is funded. And so I think one of the things that I would say the business community could help with would be to advocate with our legislature around funding for education. And I know we have some folks in the audience who have done a significant amount of advocacy on behalf of Dover over the past year and prior to that. But we're seeing that the amount that comes to a school is not enough to maintain our facilities properly, to make sure that we're providing programming that is progressive, to make sure that we're addressing all of the social issues that we see in the community. We've heard Chief Colarusso talk about the opioid crisis. That impacts students in a very real way. And the 2015 high school youth risk behavior survey data came back where about 10% of our students are impacted by having a family member incarcerated. About 24% of them are impacted with drug and alcohol misuse in their households. Those are very real issues that I think we all as a community need to rally around and make sure there are resources for, because they're impacting what's happening in school for students. Students are coming in with a certain level of experience and a certain type of experience when they go home, and it's not meshing always with the types of services and the intensity of services that schools are currently able to provide. So if we don't have the services for children and families outside of school, we need to figure out a way to meet those needs in school. So somewhere we need some advocacy and some resource support there.
I would say if you own a business, you have any employees, educate them about the dangers of prescription drugs. If they're going in for surgery, make sure they talk to their doctor about the number of and power of pills being prescribed. And if you want, we could come in, our staff would come in and be glad to work with your businesses and do a training session for your employees about the risks, dangers, what to do, what not to do, and answer any questions you or your staff have. That would be a great help.
I would say two answers that are rumbling in my head. The first is that one of the things I've learned from talking to other colleagues around the state is that the City of Dover is one of the few active learning organizations in the state. And what I mean by that is we like to learn and evolve as a community and as the staff for the community. So provide feedback. I'd love to hear from people how they think the planning process goes, how they think some of our other processes and activities go, positive or negative. We need to evolve. We need to keep growing as a municipal corporation and evolving. And so any feedback we can get is great. The second is something we've done in the past, but it seemed to have dried up over time, and maybe it's because you're all more educated than past business owners. But if you have questions, ask. Before you put up that sign, ask if you can do it, or ask what the process to be would do it. We, maybe 5 years ago, I used to do property owners, building owners, would come and say, can you come and speak to the tenants in my building and tell us what certain requirements are, what the process to get this permit is. And if you've got an opportunity, I'm happy to come and talk and share that information with you. So reach out and give feedback, and reach out before you touch someone and ask the question.
Molly, I think I'd certainly echo what Chris said about getting feedback, not only from business owners, but also all of our citizens. It's absolutely essential that we hear and learn from the public and obviously the business owners. But beyond that, I'd also suggest that the thing that makes the community successful is just that it's community, and knowing that the businesses and your employees are able to be engaged and involved, whether it be through chamber activities or other community events or other social organizations. Just find ways to stay involved and engaged in the community. And in addition to that, through venues like the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee, stay informed about issues that are happening here in our local government and also through our state government. There's a lot of, I think, opportunities for business owners and employees to be able to advocate for policy changes, whether it be at the city level or at the state level, that obviously are going to help those businesses be successful and obviously the community be successful in the long run.
Great. Well, thank you. I hope you'll join me in thanking our panelists this morning and also our sponsor, Eversource. And on behalf of the Greater Dover Chamber of Commerce, thank you for coming and enjoy the rest of your day.